What data can prove that Bitcoin's calf has completely ended? If you are interested in this issue, please follow me. Let's look at it from a weekly perspective. We can open the Bitcoin dominance chart below, which is the comparison chart between Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance. If we pull back the previous round of bullishness, you can find that when we are still rising and we have not violently fallen below, the Bitcoin dominance index continues to go up, which can mean that when Bitcoin rises, Bitcoin leads the entire cryptocurrency to rise together, that is, Bitcoin drives the rise. Compared with other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin rises more sharply. And when it falls, it also falls less, but you can see that after we ended at Mavericks. That is, at this position, after it broke down, we saw the shock behind us. You can find that Bitcoin dominance continued to fall, which means that we were going this way at that time. For a period of time, Bitcoin was relatively weak relative to altcoins. Until the halving started, Bitcoin was rising, and the Bitcoin Advantage Index was also keeping up. So we can find that basically the comparison, this healthy rise in Bitcoin dominance has kept up. And when the Bitcoin Dominance Index began to fall back, we experienced shocks and declines. Then I also think that if we pull the current market is also applicable. We can find that when our Bitcoin is rising from $15,000, that is the market trend of Bitcoin dominance. It is also continuing to rise until we hit it. After reaching the previous high, then Bitcoin began to fall. You can also find that Bitcoin dominance also responded and began to fall. If we specifically open the chart of Bitcoin dominance, we can find that it has a very clear swap around 48.5. Here is a very clear resistance. These positions also have the effect of resistance. So let's go to the back. After the breakthrough, it has temporarily stepped into support. But what if our support has not been firmly stepped on and then falls below? That is to say, this kind of market is generated. Then I think our Bitcoin will also have a deeper decline or at least a volatile and falling market. Just like what we saw before. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 again. Let's take a look at the benchmark. What about the S&P 500? In fact, we look at the S&P 500 from the daily line. The current top pattern feels more mature. You can see that we are at this position. It has formed a head and shoulders top and it is a daily line. At the line level, this is something we haven't seen in the past rise. In fact, our rise has been going on for a long time. This rise started in mid-October 2022 and has actually gone on for about 10 years until now. It's very close to a year. This year's rise is very likely to come to an end. If we break down from this head and shoulders top, we will at least usher in a wave of correction. In fact, we are below. We have talked about it before. At this position, which is around $1,450. At this position around 1,400, we have a very clear exchange. And there is always resistance at this position. The role of resistance. If we say that we fall back down, we can indeed expect that we will get some support around $4,160. But we can measure the target price of this head and shoulders. Of course, I know this is a very rough method and a very simple method. What if we measure it a little bit? It will probably be a stronger exchange than this one. A little further down. In fact, the area we are currently blocked is just in front. We can clearly draw it right here at around $4,500. You can see here. Resistance, support, resistance. Of course, we are blocked at this place now. If we pull to our current disk, you can find that the position of its head and the position of its right shoulder are basically in the same place. What if we really want to start a real bullish position? Of course, Bitcoin will still follow the US stock market in many cases. It depends on the face of the US stock market. If we really want to start a real bullish position in the US stock market, that is, in our next round of rise, it must at least break through the previous high. The previous high position is around 4,800. Then we can clearly find that our current position is actually still some distance away from the previous high. We can review the US stock market. As long as it breaks through the previous high, there will be a very good wave. When it goes up, you can look at the US stock market. which has performed very, very strongly in the past few decades. Of course, we can choose some more classic examples, such as our high point at that time. That is, the high point created before the COVID-19 epidemic came out. Later, after the COVID-19 epidemic came out, many stocks began to plummet. However, after recovery, once we broke through the previous high, you can find that it rose violently. At that time, there were many stocks. The stock market is going crazy. So I also think that if we can break through the previous high, we can also replicate the previous trend. Let's take a look at it. In fact, the strength of US stocks can be easily solved with a little review. What we also clearly understand is the high point we set in 2015. Although we had some shocks at that time, there were shocks and consolidations. Once we broke through the previous high, we then had a very violent bull market. This bullish market is also going very steadily. So we can look forward. Looking further forward, it may be the crisis in 2008. The financial tsunami at that time. I believe it is also the case for those of us in our 20s and 30s now. I believe it will be the most impressive time. You can see was after our plunge in 2008 it took us the same. Although it took us a long time to break through the previous high. Once we broke through the previous high, what followed was a very, very violent rise. In fact, if we review the market further, you can also find that it is also very, very similar. If we look further ahead, this time it did reach near the previous high and then fell back. That was the internet bubble in 1999. Okay, in fact, if you look back further, you can also find that in fact, it is the US stock market. A very, very, very strong target has been like this in recent decades. This cycle is much longer than that of Bitcoin. After all, Bitcoin only came out in 2013. Sorry, Bitcoin only came out around 2008 and 2009. Okay, let's go back to the Bitcoin market. For Bitcoin, we can cut the level a little smaller and take a look. If we cut to the daily line and cut to the daily line, we can find the current trend we have formed. Personally, I think it is very, very similar to a place we had before. It is really very similar. The shock we had in this place at that time was that after a decline, we also had this kind of slight range shock with a relatively small amplitude. Of course then it broke, and before we broke, we actually had a double top structure. After this double top came out, in fact, this double top was very perfect. The second top on the right was higher than the first top. It will go lower, and after it breaks through, it will completely exhaust its strength and plunge directly. In fact, we are also in a downward trend, and we are looking for a top structure. Once this top structure is established, it is a very, very good time to enter the market. And you can also see that it has indeed produced a big wave of market prices in the future. If we return to our current market, you can also find that in fact, if we look at the current situation, we are also during a wave of short movements. A top structure also appeared, but this time it was not a double top. This time we were going for a head and shoulders top. What about this head and shoulders top? Let's cut to 4 hours to see. I think it went very, very well. Perfect. I also think he can operate by looking at this structure. Of course, what we are waiting for is the opportunity to fall below the neckline. In fact, the current market has not destroyed what we said before, which is the biggest shock of 55 days. The limit is 55 days, because we are on 54 to 55 days at the top, and if we are at the bottom, I will also think that we will get the market trend within 54 to 55 days, which will be before mid-October. If we are before mid-October, if the market has not yet moved, the market will gradually lose the advantage of shorts. So for shorts, we must see a very violent drop in Bitcoin before October and a half. Otherwise, the market will gradually, the advantage of short positions will be lost. If you want to participate in these trading opportunities, you are very welcome to click on the Bybit link below. Now, as long as you deposit $100 in KYC, you will be given $30 in cash. And you can directly use this cash. Of course, the activity time for withdrawing coins will not be sent until the end of September. And it is only available to new users. As long as you are a new user and deposit $100 in KYC, you will be given $30 in cash. You can withdraw the coins directly and there is no need You are welcome to do any transaction and get the following cash rewards. Cryptocurrency quotes are time-sensitive. If you don't want to miss the next trading opportunity, please press the subscribe button and turn on the small bell to join the most profitable Bitcoin Chinese channel on YouTube. Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.